The National Rifle Association has joined a number of organizations suing to stop a 6.5% excise tax on ammunition and firearms that's set to go into effect in Colorado tomorrow. Proposition KK was passed by 1.68 million voters back in November. The tax revenue would be allocated to school security and mental health services for veterans, domestic and other violence victims, and at-risk youth. The lawsuit was filed Monday in Denver District Court. The lawsuit seeks to overturn the tax, citing it as an unfair burden on lawful gun owners and firearm industries businesses.
Colorado has officially crossed a line. As of April 1st, the state began enforcing Proposition KK, a voter-approved law that imposes a 6.5% excise tax on all firearms and ammunition sold at retail. They're not even pretending anymore. This is an overt attack on the Second Amendment, an unconstitutional barrier erected between citizens and the most foundational right they have, the right to bear arms. This isn't about public safety. That phrase has become a rhetorical crutch for authoritarians who want to gut your freedoms while patting themselves on the back. But safety does not trump the Constitution. That's not how this country works, or at least it's not how it's supposed to work. You don't get to violate the Bill of Rights just because you claim it's for a good cause. If that logic held, the government could charge a speech tax to reduce hate or unimpose a Fourth Amendment fee every time you wanted a warrant before your house was searched. This 6.5% tax isn't regulation. It's suppression through economic strangulation. It doesn't apply to knives or baseball bats or bear spray. It only targets guns and ammo. Law-abiding citizens trying to buy firearms legally through licensed dealers are now being financially punished for doing so. Criminals won't feel it. The people who already ignore the law won't pay a dime. The only people impacted are those who actually follow the rules. The worst part? If Colorado can get away with a 6.5% tax, what's stopping them from hiking it to 50% or 600% or 1,000,000%? Nothing but political will. Once the state claims the authority to tax a constitutional right, there is no ceiling. The door is open for tyranny by increments. If the right can be priced, it can be priced out of reach. This isn't just an infringement, it's a weaponized financial filter designed to separate the wealthy from the armed. Now look, I don't pretend the Supreme Court gets everything right. Frankly, they get it wrong all the time. They're not infallible, and they're certainly not the final word on morality, liberty, or what the Constitution actually means. But even they, with all their contradictions, have repeatedly ruled that you can't slap a special tax on a constitutional right. That matters because if even they agree this is unconstitutional, it shows I'm not just shouting into the void here. In Minneapolis, Star Tribune, Vover of Minnesota, the court struck down a tax on paper and ink used by newspapers, making it clear that governments cannot single out constitutional rights for special financial burdens. In Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, they ruled the government may not impose a charge for the enjoyment of a right granted by the federal Constitution. That applies to guns just as much as it does to speech or religion. In Harper v. Virginia Board of Elections, they obliterated poll taxes because tying a right to someone's bank account is unconstitutional. You can't condition access to a right on your ability to pay for it, period. But let's be honest, even saying unconstitutional feels meaningless now. That word used to carry weight. Now it sounds like a nerd on the playground telling the bullies they're not allowed to hit him while they're already stomping his face into the concrete. Everyone knows what's happening here violates the Constitution. The people doing it know. They just don't care. They're daring you to whine about it while they put the boot down harder. Calling it unconstitutional is technically right, but practically irrelevant when there's no consequence, no enforcement, no justice. It's a legal fig leaf in a fight where the other side has already thrown away the rule book. Supporters of Proposition KK say the revenue, about $39 million per year, will go to things like school safety and services for crime victims. That's not a justification. That's political money laundering. They're funneling your rights through a guilt trap, daring you to object so they can accuse you of not caring. Meanwhile, they normalize the idea that constitutional freedom is something you purchase like a luxury item. This isn't about revenue, it's about precedent. If the government can tax your rights, it can price them out of reach. Once they do that, they don't need to ban anything. They just sit back and watch fewer and fewer people exercise their freedom because it costs too much to do so. That's why the NRA, the Firearms Policy Coalition, and the Second Amendment Foundation are suing, not because they're against helping victims, but because they know once you accept this kind of tax, the entire Bill of Rights becomes a pay-to-play scam. Colorado's government isn't regulating firearms. It's assaulting liberty. There is no principled limit to this kind of abuse. If this tax stands, then the Second Amendment is nothing more than a theory reserved for those who can afford the state's permission slip. Leave a comment if you're done being taxed into silence. Share this if you're ready to remind the government rights are not for sale.